Most men walk away from the person they were most compatible with. Not because the interest was not there, not because the connection was not real, not because there was some fundamental incompatibility that would have made a relationship impossible no matter what they did, but because they could not read what was actually being communicated, because they were waiting for a signal that was loud and obvious and impossible to misinterpret. They were waiting for something direct, something unmistakable, something that would remove all doubt and all risk and all uncertainty. While the actual signal was sitting right in front of them, quiet and consistent and completely invisible to anyone who did not know what to look for. And that is the tragedy of so many missed connections. Not that the feeling was absent, not that the timing was wrong, not that circumstances made it impossible, but that one person was signaling clearly and the other person simply did not have the framework to recognize what was happening in front of them. So they walked away. They dismissed it. They convinced themselves they were imagining things. They told themselves that if it was real, it would be more obvious. And by the time they realized what they had missed, the moment had passed and the other person had moved on. And that pattern repeats itself constantly. Not because people are bad at reading others, but because they are looking for the wrong signals entirely. They are looking for what they imagine attraction should look like rather than what it actually looks like when it is real and genuine and unperformed. Attraction in women is not subtle because they are playing games. It is subtle because it is largely unconscious. The most genuine signals of interest are not the ones that were decided on and then performed. They are the ones that happened before any decision was made. The ones the body produces before the mind has even caught up to how it feels. The ones that emerge naturally from a real internal response rather than from a calculated strategy. And those signals, once you understand them, are actually more reliable than anything obvious ever could be, because obvious signals can be performed. Obvious signals can be faked. Obvious signals can be the result of someone who knows what they are doing and is deliberately trying to create a certain impression. But the quiet signals, the unconscious signals, the signals that happen automatically before any conscious choice has been made, those cannot be faked. They cannot be performed. They are the body's honest response to genuine attraction, and they are far more trustworthy than anything that was deliberately produced for your benefit. Today we are going deep into 5 of them. Not surface-level observations, the psychology underneath each one, why it happens, what it actually means, and how to tell the difference between a real signal and ordinary friendliness that means something else entirely. Because that distinction is where most people get lost. They see a signal, they interpret it through the filter of what they want to believe, and they end up misreading something that was either more significant than they realized or less significant than they hoped. And both mistakes are costly in their own way. One leads to missed opportunities. The other leads to embarrassment and confusion and wasted emotional energy. So, we are going to get this right. We are going to build a framework that lets you read these signals with clarity and confidence. Welcome back to the channel. If this is useful, hit subscribe and drop a like. It genuinely helps more people find their way here. Now, before we get into the 5 signs, I want to establish something foundational that will make everything that follows more useful. Reading attraction accurately requires 2 things that most people skip. The first is patience. Not with her, but with the process. A single moment, a single look, a single conversation tells you very little about genuine interest. What tells you something real is a pattern across multiple interactions. The direction something is moving over time. The consistency of behavior that did not get planned and performed but just keeps quietly appearing. You are not looking for a single piece of evidence that proves interest. You are looking for a body of evidence that accumulates over time and points in a consistent direction. That requires patience. It requires the willingness to observe without jumping to conclusions. It requires the ability to hold uncertainty without needing to resolve it immediately. And that is hard for most people because uncertainty is uncomfortable. We want answers. We want to know where we stand. We want clarity. But the kind of clarity that comes from forcing a premature conclusion is false clarity. It is not real. It is just the relief of having decided something whether or not the decision was accurate. So patience is not just a nice virtue. It is a strategic necessity. It is what allows you to gather enough information to make a genuinely informed judgment rather than reacting to the first thing you see. The second is honesty. Specifically, the willingness to observe what is actually there rather than interpreting everything through the filter of what you are hoping to find. This is the harder one. This is the one that most people struggle with because it asks you to set aside your desires and look at reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Wishful reading is one of the most common sources of confusion in this territory. It happens when someone is so invested in a particular outcome that they start seeing evidence for it everywhere, even when none exists. They interpret friendliness as attraction. They interpret politeness as interest. They interpret ordinary social warmth as something more significant than it actually is. And the antidote to it is not cynicism. It is careful, patient, honest observation of actual behavior rather than projected meaning. You have to be willing to see what is in front of you without the filter of what you want it to mean. That does not mean assuming the worst. It does not mean dismissing everything as meaningless. It means looking at the behavior itself independent of your wishes and asking what it actually indicates. That takes practice. It takes self-awareness. It takes the ability to hold your desires loosely and let reality be what it is. But it is absolutely essential if you want to read these signals accurately. With that in place, let us get into it. The first sign is one that happens entirely in her body before her mind has made any conscious decision about how she feels. She orients toward you. This is not dramatic. You will not necessarily catch it in a single moment, but across a conversation or across an evening in a shared social space. Her body tends to angle in your direction more than the situation requires. When she is in a group, her shoulders face you. When she laughs, her eyes find yours briefly before returning to wherever they were. When you speak, her body stills in a particular way that is different from how she holds herself when other people are talking. Psychologists call this orienting behavior, and it is one of the most consistently documented non-verbal indicators of genuine interest across multiple decades of research. The reason it is so reliable is precisely because it is not deliberate. People do not consciously decide to orient their bodies towards someone. It happens because the brain is assigning that person's significance, and that significance gets expressed physically before it gets expressed verbally. The brain is constantly processing the environment and making judgments about what matters and what does not. And those judgments get reflected in how the body positions itself in space. Someone who matters gets more attention, more presence, more orientation. Someone who does not matter gets less. That is why orienting is so reliable as a signal. It is not something you can fake. It is not something you can perform. It is the body's honest response to genuine significance. And when that orienting happens repeatedly and consistently across multiple interactions, you have something real. The key word here is naturally. Orienting that just keeps happening unremarkably across an entire interaction is far more meaningful than a single obvious moment of turning toward you. You are not looking for a dramatic gesture. You are looking for a quiet, consistent pattern of your presence being where her attention and her body tend to return. That pattern is what tells you something real. It tells you that somewhere beneath the surface of conscious awareness, you have been assigned significance. And that significance is not nothing. It is the foundation upon which genuine attraction is built. So pay attention to where her body points. Pay attention to where her feet are aimed. Pay attention to whether her shoulders square to you or away from you. Pay attention to whether her posture opens toward you or closes off when you are present. These are not small details. They are the body's honest language. And once you learn to read that language, it will tell you more than any amount of words could ever convey. The second sign is one that most people walk right past without registering it. She manufactures reasons to continue the conversation. Every exchange has a natural rhythm, a point where the subject has been covered, the interaction has reached a comfortable conclusion, and both people could go their separate ways without any social awkwardness at all. With someone she feels nothing particular toward, she will use that moment. The conversation closes cleanly, and she moves on with someone she is genuinely interested in. Something different happens at that moment. A new question appears, an observation she just thought of, a different angle on what was just discussed that extends the time together past the point where it had a natural opportunity to end. Not in an obvious manufactured way, often so smoothly that you might not notice it is happening in the moment. But the conversation keeps going, and the exit point keeps getting quietly passed. This is one of the most meaningful signals available because it involves a choice. Not always a fully conscious one, but a preference that is real enough to produce behavior. She is deciding somewhere beneath deliberate calculation that she is not ready for this to end yet. That is significant. It means that her interest in you is strong enough to override the natural social tendency to end conversations when they reach a natural conclusion. It means that she is finding reasons to stay in your presence longer than the situation requires. And that is not nothing. Pay particular attention to what happens when you are the one who initiates an exit. Does the conversation close cleanly, or does something appear? A follow-up question, a reason to exchange contact information, a last observation that extends things just a little longer. That appearance, especially when it keeps happening across multiple interactions, is telling you something real about where her interest sits. It is telling you that she values your presence. It is telling you that she enjoys your company. It is telling you that she is not ready to let you go yet. And those are all indicators of genuine interest. So pay attention to the conversations that do not end. Pay attention to the ones that keep going past their natural conclusion. Pay attention to the ones where the exit is quietly avoided. Those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that are telling you something real. The third sign is the one I want to spend the most time on because it is the most commonly missed and in many ways the most genuinely revealing indicator of all. She remembers specific things you mentioned in passing, not the significant things you said in important conversations. The things you mentioned briefly without emphasis that most people would have heard and immediately let go. The name of your hometown, a book you mentioned once, an opinion you expressed about something minor 3 weeks ago, the detail about your family you referenced in one sentence during a conversation about something else entirely. This is not a coincidence or an unusually good memory. It is evidence of a specific kind of attention. When someone is genuinely interested in another person, their brain processes what that person says at a different depth than it processes ordinary social exchange. The information gets retained not through conscious memorization, but because significance gets assigned to it automatically in direct proportion to how much the person matters internally. That is how the brain works. It prioritizes information about things that matter. It lets go of information about things that do not. So when she remembers a detail you mentioned once briefly, she is telling you that you matter. She is telling you that her brain has assigned you significance. She is telling you that you are not just another person in the crowd. You are someone worth paying attention to. And that is a powerful signal. When she brings back something you mentioned once briefly without emphasis, she is doing something she may not even be fully aware of. She is showing you that you occupied her thinking after the conversation ended. That what you said continued to be processed after you stopped saying it. That somewhere in the background of her mental life, you have been present. That is not a small thing. In fact, in terms of reliable indicators of genuine interest, it is one of the largest things there is because it involves not just present attention, but sustained attention. It involves not just what she did in the moment, but what she did after the moment passed. It involves the fact that you stayed with her after you left. And that is something that does not happen with someone she feels nothing for. That is something that happens when someone has made a real impression. So pay attention to the details she remembers. Pay attention to the things she brings back that you had forgotten mentioning. Pay attention to the way she incorporates your words into future conversations. Those are not coincidences. Those are signals, and they are among the most reliable signals there are. The fourth sign is a shift in her behavior that is uniquely present when you specifically are around. She is slightly different with you than she is with everyone else. Not a completely different person, not an obvious performance of a version of herself she has constructed for your benefit, a subtle shift that is specific to your presence. She is slightly more animated or slightly more still, slightly more careful about what she says, or slightly more willing to say things she would not say in a group context. Something about the energy she brings when you are in the room is a little different from the energy she brings when you are not. This is one of the most genuine signals available because it is one of the least possible to fully manufacture. You cannot completely perform a different version of yourself around a specific person across multiple interactions over an extended period of time. It happens because something about that person produces a real internal response, a kind of heightened attention and care, and something close to a pleasant alertness that adjusts how you show up without you necessarily deciding to adjust. That is why this signal is so reliable. It is not something that can be faked consistently over time. It is the natural result of genuine interest. And when you see it, you can trust it. If anyone who observes both of you in different contexts has ever mentioned, even casually, that she seems different when you are around, that observation deserves significantly more weight than it usually receives. People outside the dynamic often see patterns that the two people inside it are too close to read clearly. They see the shift in behavior because they are not invested in the outcome. They are just observing, and their observation is often more accurate than anything you could see from inside the dynamic. So if someone else has noticed that she is different with you, pay attention. That is a signal worth taking seriously. It means that the shift is real enough to be visible to others, and that is not nothing. That is something quite significant. The fifth sign is one that most people either miss entirely or actively misinterpret when they encounter it. She teases you. Not mean-spirited teasing. Not teasing that has an edge of genuine criticism or that leaves you feeling diminished, light, warm, playful teasing that carries underneath it a quality of comfort and familiarity that the length of the acquaintance does not quite account for. Understanding why this signals genuine interest requires understanding what teasing actually requires psychologically. Teasing, even gentle teasing, involves taking a small social risk. It requires a certain confidence that the other person will receive it in the spirit it is intended, that they will not take offense, that there is enough goodwill and warmth between you to hold the joke without it damaging anything. People do not take that risk with strangers they feel nothing for. They do not playfully challenge someone whose reaction they are genuinely uncertain about. This specific kind of teasing that signals interest is the kind that implicitly claims a small degree of intimacy, a familiarity that feels slightly beyond what the official timeline of the acquaintance would justify, as though she has already decided at some level that has not yet been consciously deliberated that there is something between you worth feeling comfortable in. That is a significant signal. It means that she feels safe with you. It means that she trusts you enough to be playful. It means that she is willing to take a small risk to connect with you. And all of those are indicators of genuine interest. When teasing is combined with sustained eye contact, when it is followed by a smile she holds slightly longer than the joke requires, when it happens repeatedly and specifically with you, it is not nothing. It is the behavior of someone who feels safe enough in your presence to be playful. And safety is one of the foundational conditions of genuine attraction. Without safety, attraction cannot flourish. With safety, it can grow and deepen and become something real. So, pay attention to the teasing. Pay attention to whether it feels warm or whether it feels pointed. Pay attention to whether it leaves you feeling good or whether it leaves you feeling diminished. Pay attention to whether it happens consistently or only occasionally. And when it is warm and consistent and specific to you, recognize it for what it is, a signal of genuine interest. Now, here is the most important thing I am going to say today, and I want you to really sit with it. These 5 signs are not a guarantee. They are not a formula that produces certainty when you check enough boxes. They are signals that shift probability. They suggest the presence of genuine interest in a direction that would otherwise be difficult to read. And reading them from a distance, however carefully and however honestly, will always leave some degree of uncertainty because people are complex. Because behavior is contextual, because what looks like interest sometimes has a different explanation, and what looks like indifference sometimes conceals real feeling. There is only one thing that resolves uncertainty completely: honest, direct communication. And I know that is the part most people want to skip because direct communication requires vulnerability. It requires the willingness to have a clear answer that might not be the one you were hoping for. It requires a kind of courage that observation from a safe distance never asks of you. But here is what I want you to understand about that courage. The worst possible outcome of asking clearly and honestly is a clear, honest answer. And a clear, honest answer in any direction is infinitely more useful than months of reading signals from a distance and never knowing for certain. Because clarity, even when it is not the clarity you wanted, frees you. It allows you to move on. It allows you to stop investing emotional energy in something that is not going anywhere. It allows you to redirect your attention to someone who will reciprocate your interest. And that is worth the vulnerability. That is worth the risk. These signs exist to give you the confidence to have that conversation, not to replace it, not to give you enough certainty to act without it, but to help you stop talking yourself out of approaching someone you are genuinely interested in because you have convinced yourself based on an incomplete reading of quiet signals that nothing is there. Because nothing is more common in my work than someone describing a connection that was real and mutual and never acted on. Because both people were waiting for a certainty that direct communication would have provided in 5 minutes. Do not let that be your story. Do not let fear of rejection keep you from finding out what might have been. Do not let uncertainty keep you from taking the risk that could change everything. Because the cost of not asking is often far greater than the cost of asking and hearing no. The cost of not asking is a lifetime of wondering what might have been. And that is a heavy burden to carry. Now, if you want to go deeper into the psychology of genuine attraction and connection, including how to build the kind of grounded confidence that makes honest communication feel natural rather than terrifying, I have put together a free ebook that covers all of it. It goes into the full psychological framework of how interest develops and what sustains it, what genuine confidence actually looks and feels like from the inside, and how to show up in a way that builds real connection rather than simply trying to decode it from across the room. The link to download it completely free is in the description and pinned in the comments. Go get it. Here is what I want to leave you with today. The version of her interest you are looking for is probably not going to arrive loudly. It is in the conversation that keeps going past its natural ending. In the detail she remembered from a month ago. In the way her body orients toward you in a room full of other people. In the specific warmth underneath the teasing. In the slightly different version of herself that shows up when you are around. None of that is nothing. In fact, all of it together is something quite clear. Pay attention to the quiet signals. Trust the pattern over any individual moment. Read the direction things are moving across time rather than searching for certainty in a single interaction. And when the pattern is consistent enough that you feel it, not just in your analysis, but in your gut, stop waiting for certainty that observation alone will never deliver. Have the conversation. The rest will follow from there. Drop a comment below. Have you ever missed something real because you talked yourself out of trusting what you were seeing? What finally made you see it clearly?